How does a man go from selling his life's work for $60 million to watching his own daughter carried out of a restaurant on a stretcher? How does he stay calm when he realizes that the drink she meant for him was supposed to turn him into a confused old man they could control? This is how I went from being their quiet wallet to the person who took everything back using only the rules they respected. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Gregory Cole, and 2 months ago I sold the company I built from nothing for $60 million. I still feel strange when I say that number. Most of my life, I did not think in millions. I thought in delivery times, late penalties, and angry clients who wanted their orders on time. I ran a small logistics software firm that grew slowly for more than 30 years. I hired people, trained them, worried about payroll, and watched every small bill. I drove an old sedan until the doors rusted at the bottom. Now I live in a high-rise condo with glass walls and a view of the river. People call me a success. Inside, I still feel like the man who stayed until midnight to fix one more bug before a big client meeting. I have one child, my daughter Emma. Her husband's name is Tyler. They both work in modern marketing and lifestyle projects that I still do not fully understand. They talk about brand partnerships and social reach. I talk about route planning and warehouse stock levels. For a long time, I believed this mix of old and new was charming. My daughter liked to say that I built the foundation and they would build the future. At least that is how I chose to hear it. After the sale went through, Emma suggested a celebration. She said we should go to the most expensive restaurant in town. The place is called Le Ciel Rouge, Red Sky. I had walked past it many times, but never stepped inside. It has tall doors, dark windows, and a long waiting list. The kind of place where people whisper and their watches shine under soft light. Emma said it was perfect for someone who just sold a company for $60 million. I agreed because I wanted to make her happy. On the night of the dinner, I arrived a little early. The hostess knew my name. That surprised me. She led me through the main dining room with its heavy carpets and white tablecloths. The air smelled like grilled fish, butter, and wine. People at other tables looked polished and relaxed, like they had never worried about a late payment in their lives. I wore my best dark suit. It fit, but I still felt like the repair guy who somehow walked into the main show. Emma and Tyler came in together. Emma wore a simple dark dress that made her look older than 32, in a good way. Tyler had one of his tight jackets and a watch I knew had not been cheap. He walked like the room belonged to him. When they reached the table, Emma hugged me and said she was proud of me. Tyler clapped my shoulder and told me that now it was time for me to learn how rich people really enjoy life. His tone was light, but the words stayed in my mind. We ordered starters and a bottle of wine that cost more than some old used cars I once drove. When the waiter held out the list, I hesitated over the numbers. Tyler laughed and told him to bring something special because this was a historic night. He said his father-in-law had finally joined the true winners. Emma smiled, but there was a tiny edge in it, like she was already thinking about the next step. While we waited for the wine, we talked about my plans. Emma wanted to know if I still thought about working in some role with the company that bought my firm. I said they had offered a limited advisory position, but I had not decided. Tyler shook his head and told me I should not waste time in a half-retirement. He said I should give them my name and contacts, then enjoy life while they handled the complicated money part. I said I was still getting used to the idea of not running my own office. They both exchanged a look that they probably thought was quick enough to hide. The wine came. The waiter poured a little into my glass so I could taste it. I nodded, and he filled the glasses. It was smooth and rich, but I do not have the words people use in tasting notes. I only knew it was strong. Emma raised her glass and told me again that I deserved this night. Tyler repeated that with this kind of money, the main task now was to protect me from stress. He did not say for myself, but I heard it all the same. A few minutes later, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I looked down and saw the name Elena on the screen. She is the chief operations officer at the company that bought my business. I excused myself and stepped away from the table. Tyler joked that I was already breaking the first rule of retirement by taking calls at dinner. Emma rolled her eyes and said that I was still married to my work. I smiled, but I walked toward the hallway near the restroom so I could hear clearly. I answered the call. Elena congratulated me again and said the integration was going well. She told me some of my old staff were nervous, but they were doing fine. She also said some of the big clients had asked about me and that my name still carried weight. She asked if I was enjoying the new chapter of my life. I said I was with my daughter and her husband at a nice place and that life felt strange but good. She laughed softly and wished me a calm evening. We ended the call on a friendly note. I turned to go back to the table, but but a man in a dark vest stepped into my path. It was our waiter, but without the tray. He looked younger up close, maybe late 20s. His name tag said Luis. His voice was low when he spoke. He said he did not want to cause a problem, but he felt he should tell me something. He explained that while I was on the phone, my daughter leaned over my glass and poured something into it from a small vial. He made a small motion with his fingers, showing a tiny bottle. For a moment, I just stared at him. In my ears, the restaurant noise grew distant. I asked him if he was sure. He nodded and said he saw it clearly because he had been near our table, bringing bread to the next one. He looked nervous and said he knew he could get in trouble if he was wrong, but his conscience did not let him ignore it. He kept his voice low, as if he expected me to shout. I did not. I thanked him and told him he had done the right thing. My throat felt dry. On the short walk back to the table, my thoughts moved fast, but my steps stayed slow. Part of me wanted to believe there was a simple answer. Maybe she had poured more wine and he had misread it. Maybe it was some silly prank I did not understand. But I remembered the papers she had handed me a week after the sale. Power documents that would give her and Tyler control over my accounts. She had used words like simplify, protect, and streamline. I had placed those papers on my coffee table and not signed them. I told myself I just needed more time to read. Now I wondered if that small delay had just saved me. When I reached the table, Emma and Tyler were laughing about some story from a trip they took last year. Both glasses of wine sat waiting. Mine was closer to my plate. I sat down and tried to keep my face neutral. Luis appeared behind me with a jug of water. Tyler said that I should enjoy the wine more and worry less about phone calls. I smiled at him and said I had one more small habit from my old life. I stood up my glass, picked up Emma's, and said I must have mixed them up when I left. I placed her glass in front of me and pushed mine toward her with a little joke about senior moments and confusion. Emma frowned for half a second and then laughed. She said it did not matter which glass was hers. Tyler said that was proof that I needed them to handle paperwork soon, because if I could not keep track of a glass, how would I manage 60 million? Everyone at nearby tables heard them and smiled politely at the joke. It stung, but I let it pass. I asked Luis for more water instead. He poured it slowly and glanced at me, his eyes serious. I gave him a small nod. The food arrived. The plates were arranged like small works of art. I cut my steak into neat pieces and chewed carefully, but I barely tasted it. My thoughts kept circling the image of Emma leaning over my glass with a small bottle in her hand. It was easier to picture now that Luis had said it. My daughter has always been organized and focused. She does not act without a plan. I wondered what story she would have told if I had drunk from that glass. Perhaps that I had too much wine, perhaps that I had not been well for months. I felt a cold line run down my back even as the restaurant stayed warm around us. About 15 minutes after I returned to the table, Emma's voice changed. She was in the middle of describing a new project, and then her words started to blur together. At first, I thought she was laughing too hard at Tyler's joke. Then I saw her eyes. They did not focus. She blinked several times and pressed her fingers to her temples. She said she felt lightheaded. Tyler chuckled and told her she could not handle strong wine. She tried to answer, but her sentence broke in the middle. Her hand slipped on the tablecloth. Her fork clattered on the plate. The people at the next table looked over. Emma tried to stand, but her legs did not hold her weight. Her knees hit the chair. Her body tilted to the side. Luis moved faster than anyone else. He stepped in and held her shoulders so she did not slide to the floor. The room went quiet for a second, then filled with chairs moving and voices calling for help. Someone from the staff called emergency services. Another person checked Emma's pulse and breathing with quick, trained motions. Tyler raised his voice and said she always reacted strongly to alcohol and that she must have had too much. He said this in a way that made it sound like I had encouraged her to drink. He pointed out the bottle and told the staff that I had wanted something extra strong to celebrate. My name hit the air around me like a stone. I sat still and watched. I saw Luis look at me once with steady eyes before he turned back to help. The manager appeared at his side, speaking into a small radio. The soft music in the restaurant stopped. The only sounds were quiet orders, the rolling of a small cart with supplies, and the worried whispers of other guests. Outside, through the dark glass, I saw the glow of lights from the street. Inside, everything narrowed to Emma's pale face and Tyler's loud explanations. When the medical team arrived and took over, I stepped back against the wall. They placed Emma on a small wheeled bed and fastened straps over her. Tyler walked beside them, talking about how she could never handle celebration nights. He did not mention the small vial. He did not mention the glass. I pressed my hands together and said nothing. I watched my only child leave the room in the care of strangers, and I wondered when, exactly, she had stopped trusting me enough to talk to me like a father instead of a target. At the hospital, they told me I could not ride with Emma in the ambulance. There was only space for the medical team and one family member, and Tyler stepped forward before I could say anything. He said he would handle it. I watched the doors close and listened to the sound of the siren fade. Then I went home because I did not know what else to do, and I did not want to stand in a waiting room while he told his version of the story to everyone. My condo felt quiet when I opened the door. The city lights shone through the glass, but inside it was only shadows and the soft hum of the refrigerator. I took off my jacket and placed it on the back of a chair. My shirt still smelled faintly of the restaurant, grilled food, perfume, and sharp wine. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on the couch. My hands did not shake, but I had to tell them not to. I tried to focus on simple facts. Emma had been taken to the hospital. She was breathing when they left. The medical team moved calmly, like they had seen this before. The restaurant staff had responded in an orderly way. All of this meant that she probably would be all right. I repeated that to myself several times. Then I thought about Luis in the hallway and the small motion of his fingers when he described the vial. That image pressed on another memory in my mind, and the past rose up. I had started my company in a rented basement with bad heating and a single window near the ceiling. Back then I had hair, and Emma was not born yet. I wrote code at an old desk and met small trucking company owners in cheap diners. They were not polite men. They cared about one thing, getting orders from A to B faster and cheaper. I learned their roots, their habits, their problems. I saw where software could help and where it only got in the way. When Emma came into the world, I was still in that basement. Her mother and I did not stay together. We were two different kinds of tired and never found a way to rest in the same place. She moved to another city when Emma was 6. Emma stayed with me because her mother said I had more stability. That word felt heavy at the time. Stability meant long days at the office and simple dinners at home. It meant I did not date much and spent my free hours debugging or cleaning. Emma grew up in the office as much as in our apartment. On weekends, when big releases were close, I brought her with me. She sat at a small table with her school books and colored pencils. When she finished her homework, she watched videos on an old laptop I set up for her. Sometimes she walked between the cubicles and asked the staff what they were doing. They liked her. They said she was curious and bright. I remember one night when she was 10, I was on the demo floor with a team trying to fix a bug before a presentation to a big new client the next morning. It was late. Emma had curled up on 2 office chairs pushed together and fallen asleep under my jacket. Every few minutes, I looked over to make sure she was still breathing normally. I thought to myself that I was working this hard so that her life would be easier than mine. The company grew slowly. We moved from the basement to a real office with windows. We hired more staff. The demo floor became bigger. My hair turned gray at the edges. I missed school events sometimes. I tried not to, but I did. When I could not go, I sent flowers or a handwritten note to her teacher. Emma and I argued about it a few times. She said I cared more about numbers on screens than about being there. I tried to explain that those numbers kept our lights on, but to a teenager, that sounded like an excuse. Even so, she always had new clothes, a good school, and a roof that did not leak. I took quiet pride in that. In her last years of high school, Emma started to call my company solid but boring. She said it with a smile. She liked stories about design firms, film studios, and tech giants with sleeping pods and free snacks. My office had bad coffee and a vending machine that ate coins. When she chose to study marketing and communication, I told her I was proud. She said she wanted to work with brands that move people, not just boxes on trucks. I did not feel insulted. I thought it was normal. Parents build practical things. Children reach for brighter colors. After college, Emma found a job at an agency that handled social media for trendy products. She sent me links to campaigns she worked on. I did not always understand the appeal, but I clicked them all and told her she was talented. She came to the office less after that. When she did visit, she looked around and shook her head gently at our old carpet and plain desks. I met Tyler at a networking event Emma dragged me to about 8 years ago. It was in a hall with loud music and blue lights. People walked around with name tags and small glasses of something sparkling. Tyler was talking in a circle of young professionals. His gestures were wide. He had smooth hair and a relaxed smile. Emma brought him over and said that he worked in innovative ventures and that I would like his energy. He told me that he admired people who built real companies, not just apps. He said men like me were rare. He asked about my firm and my clients. His questions were sharp, but every now and then he glanced at his phone and checked messages that seemed more important. When I asked him what he did exactly, he gave a long answer with many English words for different types of deals and partnerships. I understood parts of it. Most of all, I understood that he liked to move other people's money around. They married 3 years after that first meeting. The wedding was in a big hall, not unlike the networking venue. My staff gave me a suit as a gift. Emma looked happy, and that was enough for me. During his speech, Tyler praised my work ethic and said Emma had learned her drive from me. Then he joked that together, he and Emma would make sure my future was truly modern once I let go of my office keys. Everyone laughed. I told myself it was only a light comment. After they moved into their new house, I became a regular guest. The house was bright and open with a kitchen that looked like a magazine picture. White cabinets, big island table, hanging lamps. There was always some new device on the counter. Wireless speakers played soft music. On the walls, there were framed photos from trips to places I had never visited. I saw my daughter in warm clothes on mountain paths, in light clothes on beaches, in large hats on city streets. In most of them, Tyler held the camera. In many, I saw him. In only a few, I saw myself. At dinners there, I often sat at the end of the table while their friends filled the seats closer to the kitchen. They worked in similar fields: marketing, media, small online businesses. They talked about followers, launch parties, and the difficulty of finding reliable investors. More than once, one of them would say that it must be nice for Emma and Tyler to know there was real capital in the family. Each time, Emma would give a small shrug and say something about me being careful with money. Tyler would smile and say I would relax once I was retired. When they learned that a large company wanted to buy mine, their interest in my work increased suddenly. Tyler asked regular questions about the negotiations. At first, I was happy. It felt like he finally saw my world as important. He told me he had experience reading complex contracts and would be glad to help translate them. I told him I already had a lawyer I trusted, but I would not mind his general thoughts. He asked many questions and gave many opinions, some of them useful, some not. As the deal moved closer to signing, Emma talked more often about how my life would change. She said I could travel, buy a holiday home, and join them on long trips. She said it would be a relief to stop worrying about every invoice. I did not tell her that I would probably worry about different things. Worry had been my constant companion for decades. It did not vanish just because a bank balance changed. A week after the sale closed, Emma came to my condo with a folder. I remember that afternoon clearly now. She made tea in my kitchen like she had when she lived with me, moving easily between the cupboards. We sat at the dining table with the city in the background. She placed the folder in front of me and said it was from a family advisor she and Tyler worked with. She explained that now that I had serious money, I needed to think about protection. She said there were many bad actors who could target older business owners. She spoke about scams, wrong investments, and confusion in later years. The words were smooth and well prepared. Inside the folder, I found several documents. One of them was a broad power paper. It would allow Emma and Tyler to sign on my behalf in financial matters if they decided I was not in a state to do it well. One page had a simple sentence that still sits in my mind. For the purpose of protecting the principal from his own potential lack of judgment. Emma said it was just a safety step. She said it was better to have it ready before anything happened. I told her I wanted to read everything carefully. She looked a little impatient and said most people just signed and let professionals handle the details. I reminded her that I had built a company by paying attention to details. She smiled, but there was a tightness around her mouth. She left the folder on my coffee table. For days, I walked past it and felt its presence like a weight. I did not sign. I told myself it was because I trusted my own mind and did not like giving that much power away. I also told myself that Emma would understand if I took my time. Now, sitting alone on the couch after the restaurant, I felt that delay in my bones. I stood up and went over to the low table where the folder still lay. It was exactly where she had placed it, a neat rectangle with my name printed on the front. I took it to my study and opened it again under the brighter light of my desk lamp. I read the lines slowly, lips moving a little as I formed each word. I noticed how often the document spoke of my future weakness and their guidance. I saw how easy it would be, with these papers signed, for them to move large sums, change investments, alter my access, even sell property in my name if they decided it was best. I thought of Luis in the hallway, of the glass, of Emma's body on the restaurant floor. My stomach felt tight, but my mind grew strangely clear. I closed the folder and placed it on the desk, not on the coffee table this time. Then I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the thick envelope that held the final version of my company sale contract. I set it beside the folder and stared at both. The room was silent except for the distant sound of traffic far below. In front of me lay the proof of what I had built and the first draft of how someone else hoped to control it. The phone rang early the next morning. The screen showed Emma's name, but when I answered, it was Tyler's voice. He said that Emma was awake at the hospital and that the doctors wanted to keep her for observation. He told me that it had been a close call and that they were worried about her health. He also said that the staff had questions about what happened at the restaurant. His tone suggested that I should be careful about what I said. I asked which hospital they were in. He gave me the name and added that I did not need to rush because she was stable. I told him that I would come anyway. There was a pause, and then he said that it was my choice. On the way there, I drove slower than usual. The roads were familiar, but my mind was not. I thought about all the years I had driven Emma to appointments when she was young. Back then, she held my hand in waiting rooms. Now I was the one approaching her bed as a guest. The hospital building was large and white, with rows of windows and a steady flow of people. Inside, the air smelled like cleaning products and something faintly metallic. I asked at the front desk and then followed the signs to her floor. The corridor was quiet except for the rolling of carts and the soft beeping of machines. When I reached Emma's room, the door was half open. She lay in the bed, pale but awake, with a monitor beside her. Tyler sat in a chair next to her, scrolling on his phone. A nurse stood near the foot of the bed, writing on a chart. Emma looked at me with tired eyes and said that she felt silly. She explained in a weak voice that she had not eaten enough during the day and that the wine had been too strong. The nurse glanced at me and then at the chart. I saw that she had written something, but I could not read it from where I stood. Tyler added that the celebration had been intense and that I had insisted on a very strong wine. He said this in a friendly way, like a joke, but his eyes watched the nurse's reaction. The nurse asked me if I had noticed anything unusual about Emma before she started feeling unwell. I answered honestly. I said that she had seemed fine, had been talking and laughing, and then had suddenly become dizzy and confused. I did not mention the glass or the vial, not yet. I was still deciding how to use that information. After the nurse left, Tyler stood up and walked with me into the corridor. He said that the doctor was concerned about stress and that Emma had been under a lot of pressure lately. He hinted that big life changes, such as a parent selling a company, could unsettle family dynamics. The way he said it made it sound like I was part of the problem. He also mentioned that the doctor had asked if there was any history of confusion or memory problems in the family. He said he had told them that I sometimes seemed tired and distracted. That word, confused, stayed in my mind. I thought about the documents in the folder at home that spoke about protecting me from my own judgment. I asked Tyler why he had said that. He shrugged and said that it was better to be honest and that doctors needed all the information. He said that this way, if anything happened in the future, there would already be a record. He gave me a look that was almost comforting, but behind it I saw calculation. A little later, a hospital social worker came to the room. She was polite and professional. She asked general questions about Emma's work, home, and support system. She also asked about mine. She wondered if I lived alone, if I had close family nearby, if I ever felt overwhelmed by managing my affairs. Tyler stayed near the window, pretending to look at his phone, but I could feel his ears on us. I answered that I lived alone, that I had friends from the company, and that I had handled my own affairs for more than 60 years. The social worker nodded, but her eyes moved between me and Tyler. She asked if anyone helped me with finances or decisions. Tyler stepped in and said that he and Emma were starting to do that, and that we were working on some legal documents to make things smoother. She wrote something on her form. I remained silent, but inside, something straightened. After she left, I sat by Emma's bed. She reached for my hand and said that the whole incident was embarrassing. She said she did not want anyone to make a big deal out of it. I looked at her face, the same face I had watched sleeping on 2 office chairs under my jacket years ago. I wanted to ask her about the glass, about the vial, about what she had tried to do, but she was weak, and the machines around her beeped softly. I could not bring myself to confront her there. Tyler suggested that I go home and rest, since there was nothing more I could do at the moment. He said he would stay with her and talk to the doctors. He repeated that he would handle things. I nodded and left the room. In the corridor, I passed the social worker speaking quietly with a nurse. Their faces were serious. I did not know if they were talking about Emma, about me, or about someone else. But I knew that a story was forming in this building, and that Tyler wanted to write it. Back in my car, I sat for a few minutes without starting the engine. I thought of Luis and the look in his eyes. He had risked his job to warn me. I thought of the camera above the bar, the one with the small red light that blinked all night. I thought of the folder on my desk and the contract beside it. These things lined up in my mind like items on a checklist. Instead of going straight home, I drove to Emma and Tyler's house. I do not fully know why. Maybe I wanted to see their place without their presence. Maybe I wanted to feel the truth more clearly. The house was empty, as expected. I let myself in with the key they had given me years ago and stood in the quiet kitchen with its bright surfaces and framed travel photos. On the fridge, there was a whiteboard with notes written in different colors. Some were reminders about meetings and calls. Others were about gym classes, dinners with friends, and content planning, whatever that meant. At the top corner, written in neat letters, was a sentence that made my chest tighten. It said that the goal for the year was to fully secure the family future by organizing senior assets. Next to it, there was a small drawing of a lock. I opened a cupboard and saw a stack of printed pages, half covered by cookbooks. On the top sheet, I recognized the logo of the Family Advisor firm. The first line I could see mentioned strategies for intergenerational control. I did not read further. I already knew the main idea. It was not about my comfort. It was about control. I did not take anything from the house. I closed the cupboards and left everything where it was. This was not a situation where I wanted to move in the shadows. That was not my strength. My strength had always been in clear records, signed pages, and systems that work the same way every time. I locked the door behind me and returned to my car. When I reached my condo, I went straight to the study. The sun had moved across the sky since I had last been there. Light fell across the desk, touching the folder and the envelope lying side by side. I felt suddenly very calm. The fear that had been swirling in my chest settled into something else, something hard and clear. I sat down and opened the drawer where I kept my old planner notebooks. I have always liked paper as well as screens. In those notebooks, I had kept records of meetings, ideas, and people I could rely on. I flipped through one from 8 years ago, the year I first met Tyler. Near the back, there was a page with a list of professionals I trusted: my accountant, my banker, my old mentor, my lawyer. Next to my lawyer's name, Patricia, I had written a note: sharp, patient, never rushes clients. I closed the notebook and looked again at the folder with the power documents. Then I opened the safe built into the wall behind a framed picture. Inside, besides the sale contract, there was a thick binder that held my estate plan from years ago. It smelled faintly of paper and ink. I took it out and placed it on the desk with the other items. I did not read the legal language in detail that afternoon. Instead, I looked at the dates on the front pages. I saw the year when I had first thought seriously about what would happen to the company and to my savings after I was gone. Back then, Emma was still in college. In my mind, she was still the girl under my jacket on the office chairs. I had created plans that assumed loyalty and simple gratitude. Life had moved on. People had changed. Those plans were tools now, not just kind intentions. I realized, sitting there, that nothing truly forced me into the role Emma and Tyler had imagined for me. I was not a helpless passenger in my own life. I still owned my choices and my signature. No paper became real without my pen. They could tell stories to nurses and social workers. They could say that I was tired or slow. They could even try to make me drink something that would support that story. But in the end, the systems they wanted to use against me were ones I understood deeply. Contracts, records, accounts. I had lived inside those for decades. I put the binder back inside the safe and locked it. I left the folder with Emma's documents on the desk. I wanted to see it, to remember what it represented. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled through the contacts until I reached Patricia's name. My finger hovered over the call button for a moment. I thought about what this next step would mean for my relationship with my daughter. Then I reminded myself that she had already made her choice when she leaned over that glass. I pressed the button. Patricia answered on the second ring. Her voice sounded the same as it had in every contract meeting over the years. Calm, measured, a little dry. She asked how I was enjoying retirement. I told her that I needed her help with something important and that it was not about the company sale itself. I said it was about my personal life. She grew serious at once and asked if I could come to her office that afternoon. I agreed. Her office was across town, in a building with glass doors and a small lobby. I had been there many times, always in my role as company owner. This time I walked in as a father who had watched his daughter taken out of a restaurant on a stretcher. The receptionist greeted me by name and led me to a conference room with a long table and one wall of shelves full of binders. Patricia came in with a folder and a tablet. She wore the same simple suit she always wore to important meetings. She sat down opposite me and asked me to tell her everything from the beginning, not just headlines, but in order, with dates and names. So I did. I told her about the sale, the celebration dinner, the wine, and the phone call from Elena. I told her about Luis in the hallway and his quiet warning about the vial. I told her how I had switched the glasses and how Emma had collapsed 15 minutes later. I described Tyler's comments to the staff and the way he framed the story at the hospital. I told her about the social worker's questions and the feeling that a record was being built around me, not for me. She did not interrupt. She only wrote notes with a thin pen on a pad, her handwriting neat and small. When I mentioned the power documents Emma had brought, she asked for the name of the advisor firm and whether I had signed anything. I told her no, that the folder was still at my home. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she asked me one more question. She wanted to know if I believed my daughter had meant to harm me or if I thought she was acting under pressure from Tyler or others. I sat with that question for a while. I said that I did not know what was in her heart, but I knew what I had seen through Luis's eyes, and I knew where the liquid in that vial ended up. I said that, at the very least, she had been willing to risk my clarity. Patricia nodded slowly. She said that what I described sounded very serious. She used plain language. She said that putting something in a person's drink without their knowledge could be treated as an offense all by itself, even if the person did not become ill. She said that if the goal was to make me seem confused in order to gain financial control, then we were talking about more than one wrong act. She did not use big legal terms. She kept it simple so that I could hold each piece in my mind. She asked for copies of all documents Emma and Tyler had shown me. The power papers, any letters from advisors, any messages about controlling accounts. She also wanted my company sale contract and my current estate plan, so she could see the full picture. I promised to bring them the next day. She said that in the meantime, she would start a memo for herself and note down the main events with dates and names. Before I left, I asked her one thing. I asked if I was overreacting. I said that maybe I was too suspicious now, that maybe I was seeing patterns that were not there. Patricia looked at me across the table with steady eyes. She said that people who have just sold a company sometimes do worry more than usual. But she also said that in her work, she had learned to pay close attention when calm, practical clients came in with a clear timeline and a quiet voice. She said that this was the kind of story she did not ignore. On my way home, I stopped at Le Ciel Rouge. It was afternoon, between the lunch and dinner rush. The big doors were open, but the main room was mostly empty. A few staff members wiped tables and arranged chairs. I asked for the manager, and after a moment, a man in a dark suit approached. He recognized me at once. He expressed concern for Emma and asked if she was all right. I said that she was stable. Then I asked him if we could talk in private. He led me to a small office near the back with a desk, a file cabinet, and a monitor showing several camera views of the dining room and bar. I told him that something had happened with the drinks that evening. I did not accuse or raise my voice. I explained that a member of his staff had seen my daughter pour something into my glass from a small vial. I said I was not there to cause trouble for the restaurant, but that I needed to know if their cameras had recorded our table during that time. The manager frowned and said that their system covered most of the room, but not every angle. Still, he said, the area around our table usually had at least partial coverage. He called Luis into the office. When Luis came in and saw me, he straightened his shoulders a little but did not look away. The manager asked him to repeat what he had told me. Luis did so with the same calm tone. He said again that he had seen Emma lean over my glass, take a small object from her bag, and pour a clear liquid into the wine. He said he had felt uneasy, and that was why he spoke to me. He did not add anything extra. He did not take anything back. The manager listened and then turned to me. He said that they took such matters seriously. He added that he would ask their security contractor to pull footage from that evening that covered our table and the time Luis had described. He said the recordings were kept for a certain number of days and that we were still within that period. He offered to write a short letter confirming that their system had footage and that they had been asked to preserve it. I accepted that offer. He asked if I wanted the letter sent to me or to my legal representative. I gave him Patricia's name and office address. When I left the restaurant, the street outside felt louder than before. Cars passed, people talked, a bus turned the corner. But inside my mind, there was a clear thread connecting things. Luis's warning, the camera, the letter. These were not emotions or suspicions. They were pieces of record. The next day, I gathered the documents Patricia had requested. I took the advisor folder from my desk, the sale contract from the safe, and the old estate binder. I also took my phone, and following her earlier advice over email, I copied messages from Emma and Tyler to a separate folder. Some of them were about the sale. Some were about how things needed to move fast and how age made decisions harder. On their own, each message could be brushed away as a casual remark. Together, they formed a pattern. At Patricia's office, we spread everything over the conference table. She moved through the papers with practiced care. She read key sentences out loud and explained them in simple speech. She pointed to the lines in the power documents that would allow Emma and Tyler to act without my direct consent if they claimed I was not thinking clearly. She compared them with the older estate plan, where I had named Emma as a main heir but kept control for myself as long as I was alive and sound. She asked me how I felt about those older terms now. I said that back then I had trusted that my daughter would act with respect even if we did not agree on every detail. I admitted that I was not sure of that anymore. Patricia did not comment on that. Instead, she asked me what I wanted to protect most: the money itself, my reputation, or my independence. I thought for a moment and said that my independence came first, but that my name was close behind. She then raised a point I had not fully considered. She reminded me that I had not only sold a company, I had sold a company whose clients still knew me personally. If someone used my name to push deals or investments that did not match my values, it could damage more than my own image. It could harm the trust that clients had in the buyer's firm, and that could lead to wider problems. She asked if anyone had tried to use my name in this way already. I told her about Elena's call from the restaurant and how she had said that some clients still asked about me. I admitted that I did not know if Tyler had already reached out to them. Patricia suggested that I find out. She said that if he had been using my identity to open doors, that fact should also be part of the record. Later that week, I met Elena at a small coffee shop near my old office. It was a place where I had once taken junior staff for simple lunches. Now it felt like neutral ground. Elena arrived with a laptop bag and a soft scarf around her neck. She greeted me warmly and asked again how I was adjusting to life after the sale. We ordered coffee and sat at a corner table. I told her that I needed to ask a direct question. I asked if anyone in the last months had approached her or her team claiming to speak on my behalf in new partnerships or investments. Her expression shifted from casual to careful. She opened her laptop and pulled up a list of recent outreach. There, near the top, were several messages from Tyler. In those messages, he had introduced himself as my son-in-law. He had written that he was helping me explore new opportunities. He had suggested joint ventures where my name and reputation would be used to reassure clients. He had hinted that I was ready to let the next generation take the lead. He had also implied that I was not eager to sit through long meetings, so he would handle details. Elena told me that she had felt uneasy and had not agreed to anything. She said she had planned to talk to me about it in person, but the integration work had been intense. When she heard my question now, she understood that this was more serious than she thought. She asked what was going on. I gave her a shorter version of the story, without every detail, but with enough to show why I was concerned. I asked her to do two things. First, I asked her not to sign or agree to any arrangement that involved Tyler using my name or history. Second, I asked if she would be willing to forward those messages to Patricia's office. Elena agreed to both. She said that her company valued clear lines as much as I did, and that they did not want to be pulled into family disputes. She promised to send the emails by the end of the day. When I returned home that evening, I felt tired, but not the kind of tired that comes from confusion. It was the tiredness of a man who has spent a day lifting heavy boxes and stacking them neatly in a warehouse. Except these boxes were facts. In my study, I opened a new folder on my computer and named it with the date of the celebration dinner. Inside, I created subfolders for the restaurant, the hospital, the advisor firm, and the buyer's company. I saved copies of the restaurant manager's letter, the messages from Elena, and the scans of the power documents. I wrote short notes in a simple text file for myself. Who said what, where, and when. Then I took a plain paper folder from the drawer and wrote the same date on the front with a black pen. I slipped printed copies of the most important items inside. I wanted a physical version in case anything happened to the digital one. As I was closing the folder, my phone buzzed on the desk. A new message appeared in the family group chat. It was from Emma. She wrote that she was feeling better and that she wanted to plan another dinner soon, this time in a private room at Le Ciel Rouge. She said she and Tyler had some big news about the future of the family that they wanted to share. I stared at Emma's message for a long time. The words on the screen were cheerful. She wrote about how we needed a fresh start after the scare at the restaurant. She added a smiling face and a glass emoji. She said that the private room would give us space to talk properly about family plans. Tyler replied in the chat with a comment about putting structures in place. I could almost hear his voice in the letters. I typed a short answer. I said that I would be there. I did not ask what the big news was. I already knew, more or less. They would stand in that private room and present me with more papers. They would call it security, stability, protection. They would expect me to sign. The next morning I met with Rohan, my private banker. His office was quiet and cool, with large windows looking over the business district. He greeted me with a warm handshake and asked how I liked retired life. I told him that I needed to talk about my accounts. He sat down at his desk and gave me his full attention, the way he did when we discussed large transfers for the company. I explained, in simple terms, that I did not want anyone to have full control over my money except me. I told him that my daughter and her husband had been pushing for broad access. I did not tell him every detail about the restaurant, only that I had lost trust in their judgment. He did not ask for gossip. He focused on structure. Rohan pulled up my portfolio on his screen. He showed me how the money from the sale was spread across different accounts and instruments. Then he asked what I wanted to achieve. I said I wanted 3 things. First, I wanted to make sure no one could move large sums without my direct approval. Second, I wanted clear records of every change. Third, I wanted any future support for Emma and Tyler to be organized in a way that did not depend on them making decisions for me. He nodded and began to outline options. He talked about separate tiers of access, about limits on automatic transfers, about alerts for any unusual activity. He suggested a structure where my main funds would be placed under a form of management that required my personal signature for any significant move. He also mentioned that we could prepare long-term plans that did not involve them as direct controllers. Then he added something I had not expected. He said that it was also possible to build in requirements linked to conduct, if I wished, not moral judgments, but simple facts. For example, that any person who tried to misrepresent my wishes or identity would lose certain expectations. He said it in a careful way, as if he knew he was stepping into delicate ground. We agreed that he would prepare draft ideas and send them to Patricia so that the legal and financial parts would fit together. Before I left, he set one more measure in place right away. He changed the settings on my accounts so that no new external access or signing rights could be added without my physical presence at the bank. It was a small step, but it felt like locking a door. From the bank, I went to Patricia's office again. She now had the letter from the restaurant manager, the messages from Elena, and the scans of the advisor documents. She had arranged everything in a neat file. On the top, she had written a simple title, Family Control Attempts, Gregory. We went through the hospital part next. She had helped me request copies of the basic records, that Emma had arrived with signs of sedation mixed with alcohol, that Tyler had told them I insisted on strong drinks, that a social worker had been called to ask about my support system. She explained that, taken together with the other items, this showed a pattern. It was not yet a full case, but it was more than just one bad evening. I asked her what could be done. She said there were several paths, and we could take more than one at the same time. One was to make sure my estate plan and financial structures were updated so that Emma and Tyler could not benefit from harming my independence. Another was to file a formal notice with the police about the incident at the restaurant, based on Luis's statement and the preserved footage. She reminded me that doing so did not mean I wanted my daughter in handcuffs. It meant I wanted the truth on record, in an official place, not just in my head. I agreed to both. Over the next days, we moved in small, careful steps. Patricia prepared new estate documents for me to read, in plain language. They did not erase Emma from my life. They did change the way she would receive anything from me. Instead of being a direct handler of my assets, she would become a future beneficiary with certain conditions linked to honesty and distance from my day-to-day decisions. We also created clear notes about my wish to support any future grandchildren through independent trustees instead of through Emma and Tyler. At the same time, Patricia drafted a short, factual report about the restaurant incident. She used neutral words. She wrote that a man had been seen altering a drink intended for one person, that the drink had later been consumed by another, and that medical attention had followed. She added that the restaurant had preserved footage and that a staff member had provided a statement. She filed it with the local police as an informational notice. She told me that if the lab results from the hospital confirmed certain substances, the file could become more active. When I signed the estate updates at a small notary office, the air felt still and bright. The notary, a woman with kind eyes, checked my identification, watched me sign, and stamped each page with a precise motion. There was no drama, no raised voices, just pages, ink, and a quiet shift from one reality to another. After that, I went back to my condo and sat in my study. The city moved outside my window. Inside, the folder with Emma's original documents looked thinner. Its power over me had shrunk. Nearby, the new file from Patricia held more weight. It represented lines I had drawn. Emma texted me a few times that week. She sent short updates about her health. She said that the doctors thought it was a reaction to mixing alcohol and stress. She did not mention tests or lab results. She did not ask if I had spoken to anyone about what Luis had told me. Part of me wanted to ask her, again, what she had poured into that glass. But each time I thought of the question, I saw the whiteboard in her kitchen with the words about securing senior assets. I let the silence hold the answer. Tyler called once. He sounded friendly and concerned. He asked if I was all right and if I had felt shaken by the incident. He said that these things could be a wake-up call, that health and clear thinking were fragile at any age. He slipped in a remark about how it might still be wise to sign something before another scare happened. I told him that I was reviewing my affairs with my own team and that we would handle it. There was a pause, then he said he respected that. His tone suggested the opposite. The day of the new dinner drew closer. Emma sent details about the time and told me that she had reserved the private room at Le Ciel Rouge. She wrote that this was a chance to reset, to talk openly, and to find a path that worked for all of us. She also wrote that Tyler had been working hard on a plan that would remove stress from my life forever. On the morning of the dinner, I woke earlier than usual. The sky outside was light gray. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, not in the study. I did not want to look at papers. I wanted to look at my hands, at the lines in my skin, at the proof that I had lived long enough to see both loyalty and betrayal. Later, I went into the study and opened the paper folder I had prepared with Patricia's help. Inside were copies of a few key items: the restaurant manager's letter, a summary of Luis's statement, notes about the hospital visit, and a simple outline of the steps I had taken since then. I did not need to bring everything. I only needed enough to stand straight if words in that room turned against me. I put the folder in my bag and closed the zipper. Then I opened the safe one more time and looked at the sale contract and the new estate binder. I did not take them with me. They had already done their work. The signatures on them had changed the ground under Emma and Tyler's feet, whether they knew it yet or not. On my way out, I stopped in front of a framed photo in the hallway. It was of Emma at 8 years old, sitting at my old office desk with oversized headphones on, pretending to be in charge. Her cheeks were round, her eyes serious. She had one hand on the keyboard and one on a notepad. I remembered that day clearly. I had told her that one day she could run anything she wanted. I had not thought that anything would include me. I touched the edge of the frame and then left the apartment. The drive to the restaurant felt different this time. The first time, I had gone as a proud father who wanted to share his success. Now I went as a man who knew he might have to defend himself against his own child's plans, but who also knew that he had tools of his own. When I reached Le Ciel Rouge, the light outside was fading. The tall doors and dark windows looked the same, but now I knew more about what lay inside. The host recognized me and smiled. He said that the private room was ready and that my party had not arrived yet. He asked if I wanted to wait at the bar or in the room. I chose the room. I wanted to see the space where they hoped to present their future. A staff member led me down a side corridor to a quieter area. The private room was not large, but it was richly set. White tablecloth, polished glasses, a small arrangement of flowers. A side table held menus and a carafe of water. There was a door that led to the hallway and another that I guessed led toward the staff area. I sat down at one end of the table and placed my bag on the chair beside me. I poured myself a glass of water and took a slow sip. The air was cool. The silence felt thick, but not hostile. It felt like a stage before the curtain rises. I looked at the empty chairs and imagined where Emma and Tyler would sit. I thought about what they might say, how they might smile, what language they would use to dress their plans in kind words. I thought about the quiet people who now stood behind me in law and in finance, people who had no blood tie to me but who respected my mind and my choices. I folded my hands on the table and watched the door. The door opened a few minutes later. Emma stepped in first, looking rested but thinner around the eyes. Tyler walked behind her with a leather folder under his arm. They both smiled when they saw me. Emma came over and hugged me gently. She said she was glad I came and that tonight would be better. Tyler said this night would set everything on the right track. We sat. Emma took the chair to my right. Tyler sat opposite me. A server came in, poured water, and said that someone from management would check on us later. When the door closed again, the room felt smaller. Emma started talking about her health. She said the doctors thought it was a reaction to stress and wine. She said they told her to slow down. She laughed a little and said that maybe all three of us needed to slow down. Tyler nodded and said that was why they had prepared something for me. He opened his folder and spread several sets of papers on the table. He said they had worked with their advisor to simplify my life. He talked about how these documents would make sure bills were paid, investments were updated, and I would never have to think about details again. He said it was time for me to trust the process and let the younger generation take over the hard tasks. Emma added that she did not want to see me worry. She said that watching her in the hospital had scared her and that she wanted stability for all of us. She placed a pen near my hand and said that these were just formalities, based on what any advisor would suggest. I listened without picking up the pen. Then I reached into my bag, took out my own thin folder, and set it on the table beside theirs. I told them I had also been working on some things. I said that the night at this restaurant had given me a reason to look closely at my affairs. I spoke slowly. I told them that a waiter had seen Emma pour something into my glass while I was on the phone. I said that I had switched our glasses. I said that 15 minutes later, Emma had been the one carried out. Emma stared at me, her face suddenly still. Tyler's jaw tightened. He asked what exactly I was suggesting. I did not raise my voice. I said I was not suggesting anything. I was describing what had happened and what had been seen. I told them that the restaurant manager had confirmed that the cameras had recorded our table and that the footage had been preserved. I said that Luis had written a statement about what he saw. I said that my lawyer now had both. Tyler said that this was all a misunderstanding, that maybe the waiter was confused. He said that in a busy room, people see things that are not there. I answered that I had spent my life working with records, not moods, and that this time there were records. The door opened again. Patricia stepped inside, dressed simply, holding a small notebook. Behind her came Rohan, carrying nothing but his calm expression. Emma turned to me and asked why they were there. I said that they were my guests and that this was a family matter, not a secret one. Patricia sat at the far end of the table. She said that she represented me and that she would keep her words simple. She explained that a notice about the restaurant incident had been filed with the police, along with the staff statement and the information about hospital tests. She said that this notice did not name anyone as guilty, but that it did fix the facts on an official timeline. Rohan spoke next. He said that in recent days I had changed the structure of my accounts. He explained that no one but me could now move significant funds, that no new access could be added without my in-person approval, and that any promises made in my name by others would not be honored by the bank. Emma looked from one to the other. She asked what this meant for her and Tyler. Rohan answered in plain language. He said that they had no current control rights over my money and that any future support would flow through structures I had set, not through them. Patricia then opened a slim file of her own. She said that my estate plan had been updated and registered. She explained that the old idea, where Emma would one day handle everything herself, no longer existed. Instead, any future help for her and any children she might have would pass through independent trustees. She added that my written account of the events at this restaurant and at the hospital would be attached to that file, so that future decision-makers would understand why. Tyler tried to protest. He said that this was an overreaction, that families handled things privately. He said that I was turning a simple health scare into a legal case. Patricia answered that privacy ended when someone altered another person's drink, and then used that confusion to push control documents. She kept her tone even. She said that systems existed for moments like this. I turned to Emma. I told her that I had loved seeing her grow, that I had worked most of my life to give her safety. I said that when she leaned over my glass, she had made a choice that I could not ignore. I told her that I would not fight her in the shadows, but I also would not hand her the keys to my mind or my name. Her eyes filled, but she did not speak. I pushed their folder with the power papers back across the table. I said that I would not be signing anything they had prepared. I closed my own folder and placed it in my bag. I thanked Patricia and Rohan for coming. Then I stood up. As I walked to the door, I heard Emma's phone begin to vibrate on the table. I knew what the messages would say. Alerts from the bank, a note from Patricia's office with a copy of the filing, maybe even a call from an officer wanting to schedule a talk. I did not turn back. I opened the door, stepped into the quiet corridor of the restaurant, and left them in that room with the papers they had brought and the ones they could no longer change.